I saw that. I actually didn't see this film at Flare. I saw it a year ago at South by Southwest.
That is up front. That's up front. Raj, go.
But here's the question. Is this an important LGBTQ film or not?
Hello, hello. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For Marriott is me. Raj Rudolph is there. And past Raj Rudolph, can't go that further, obviously, because Raj is in... Your box is in the way, Raj. Sean Vickers. We are Boys on Film, collectively bringing you the best and latest movie reviews. Hot off the press, as it were, before anyone else. Maybe that's not true, but we'd like to think so.
Nearly, almost.
We're doing BFI Flare, which is still running. That's how current we are. That's how up front we are, because it's not even over yet.
Mega current.
So today we're talking about Charli XCX Alone Together, global pop star Charli XCX, basically enlisting her fans to help support her make and create her new album, directed by Bradley Bell, and her other half also stars, who is Huck. He's in this. At the end credits said starring Charli XCX, and Huck and I thought, are they starring? It's a documentary. Can you star in a documentary?
She can. She's allowed.
She can. There we go. I'm guessing, Raj, you're a big fan, and Sean, I know you are a fan.
I wouldn't say I'm a big fan, but I'm a fan. I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for Charli.
Is that controversial, Sean, that Raj isn't necessarily a big fan? Because I'm not either.
No, I don't know why. Why would that be controversial?
Well, it's like people just assume that gay men love Charli XCX.
Never make assumptions. That's the first rule of anything. Never make assumptions.
There we go.
I love her.
I never said I wasn't a fan. I'm just a fan, not a big fan.
Like, you wouldn't necessarily buy all of her albums or follow her on social media or check out what she's doing.
Oh, I'd stream her album once it came out, and if I liked it, maybe give it a repeat listen.
Why don't you ask me that? Why don't you ask me that same question?
Go on, same question, Sean.
So I have all of her albums. I follow her on social media. I follow her fan groups on social media. I'm going to see her in concert.
You are a hardcore, super loyal fan, Charli XCX. Can I just say, before we start this review, I'm thinking about disabling all the comments on this post, because if I get negative on Charli XCX's ass, I know that her fans are going to come for me. They're going to kill me. They're going to cut me.
The angels will come for you, Phil. I'll be part of it. I'll be part of that group. I'll be commenting.
Hold on. So they can't come from me, because I was one of the very first people to put Charli XCX on stage in Barcode in Soho at EQ Music Live way back in the day.
Are you gooped, Sean? Are you gagged?
That's absolutely amazing, Raj. I'm like, yeah, that's phenomenal. Very impressed.
This is like before she even had her first album out, before I Don't Care, the song. And I'll never forget this about Charli. Like, I had about 6 artists on at the time, and you know, she wasn't that famous. She was just, you know, it was her Just Dance Lady Gaga phase, or she was just coming out. And I'll never forget this. For as long as I live, she didn't show up for sound check. Wow. So anyways, we're sound checking the rest of the artists, and in my mind I'm going, where's Charli? And then the manager of the bar, she's like, oh, Raj, I got a phone call for you. Go to the phone. She's like, hi, this is Charli. Just to let you know, I'm not going to make it to sound check. I kind of just rock up and do my thing, if that's okay. She was very nonchalant about it. Like, and I was like, yeah,
love her.
Cool, rock up and do your thing. And she showed up in a fluorescent pink neon poodle skirt and with a bow in her hair, and she rocked it and did her thing, and she was amazing.
There you go, Raj. Sound checks, very 90s.
Okay, so it's it's just over an hour, isn't it? An hour and 7 minutes documentary, basically filmed during lockdown.
Charli is communicating with her fans that are known as the Angels. COVID hits, she is hunkered down with her boyfriend Huck, and she decides to create an album which ought to be called How I'm Feeling Now, in 5 weeks from her home in the US. And she enlists the help of her fans, the Angels, to help her to create and produce this piece of work. And the documentary really follows the story of the creation of that album and how she leverages and works with her fan base in that kind of pop 2.0 approach, where you're very, very close to the fans and you create content in a very different way to, say, like a Madonna or a Celine Dion, which is a very pop 1.0 kind of paradigm. So she works in a very different way. She's very close to her fans. She's taking feedback constantly. And all that feeds into the creation of this new album that was called How I'm Feeling Now, that went on to be nominated for the Mercury.
I was quite surprised at how little of herself she thinks. It's almost like, not, I wouldn't say self-loathing, because is it self-loathing? It's probably quite intense, isn't it?
Well, maybe, but, you know, she's uniquely Charli. She's always has been, and that's what I kind of appreciate about her, is that she is just herself. She does the things the way that she wants to do them. She has a very business-savvy mind, which I appreciate, and I think that really showed in this documentary.
Because, I mean, she's hugely successful. She, up to a point, she was, like, on the cusp of being really big, and then, of course, she did lots of collaborations with other artists, and I was quite surprised at how little of herself she does think, because it's almost like she doesn't, I mean, she did admit that she doesn't view herself as doing great things, and that was, I was blown away by that, because she's hugely successful, plays all these big venues, she tours globally, she's got a huge following.
You know, I kind of really wanted to see how she became so famous, because literally it felt like overnight she was playing small, you know, club gigs like mine and Shoreditch and Soho, and then next, you know, it seemed like a few months later she was opening for Coldplay. It just, like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I want to find out a little bit more about how she became to be. So for me, this was kind of a missed opportunity with this documentary, to find out, peel the layers back of what makes Charli XCX.
I absolutely agree. I think I would have been more fascinated by that story rather than the kind of moaning and whinging a bit in lockdown when there's so many other problems. But I suppose everyone, you know, did have a tough time in lockdown. Everyone had a tough time differently, I think. And it's nice to see that element of her life that maybe wasn't exposed before.
I think I disagree with you both. I think what she did here was she created a piece of footage that captured a moment in time. I don't think Charli's that artist that wants to give you yet the origin story. And I know the two of you want the origin story. I think it's a different documentary. She here is saying, this is what I did. I created a piece of work, and this is how I captured it. And it is quintessentially Charli that she's done this. She hasn't gone, oh, there's some gays that want to know how I became famous. She doesn't care. What she has said is, I did a piece of work, and this tells the story of that piece of work. And if you look at it through that lens, I think it's quite amazing.
I think you'll find, Sean, that Raj and I aren't just some gays. We're more than that.
But I feel like, you know, that's where I'm coming from, which is, you can put me in the some gays bracket, but I generally approached it as a fan, like I'm really interested about how she created this piece of work that went on to get nominated for a Mercury. I mean, and the process of working with A.G. Cole, who is an incredible producer, and her previous history working with Sophie, all of that is amazing. And also really how she captures, you know, you ask about her fan base. Yes, she has a primarily LGBTQ plus fan base, and how she interacts with that fan base and how she gets such loyalty. I think that's incredible, you know, and I think that for me was very, very interesting. I think there will be at some point the origin story documentary. I just don't think it's now.
That's interesting. Did you think the fans were represented enough? Because obviously the title says Alone Together, you know, obviously referring to the fact that it wasn't just her on her own in lockdown.
Let's totally be honest here. This film was a love letter for her fans. It was, I think, more starring the fans than it really was Charli XCX. And hey, that's cool. I mean, you know, it's a way to increase your loyalty and show how much you care about your fans. I think the fans were just as much of a star as this show as Charli. It was totally a love letter to them.
I agree with Raj on that, actually, which is, you know, when I looked at the Flare brochure, I was like, yes, I really want to see this Charli documentary because I'm a fan. I talk about a lot about pop on my podcast, and we know, we're all involved in that kind of wider musical scene. There's elements of how pop stars today interact with their fans that is completely would not have happened 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And I find that really, really interesting. And I think Charli really sums it up, you know. So like, and you see other pop stars now releasing track at a time and doing that whole like trying to do pop 2.0, but it's actually a record company following a format. I think Charli leads the way in some of this stuff. I think she really is like, this is how you interact with a global fan base and they feel close to you. And the output could be a little sample or sampling yourself or doing it. Like, the documentary in itself is part of this story. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's amazing, where, you know, when we were younger, the pop star was always revered. They were at arm's length. They were like, you looked up to them. They were untouchable. And I think there was a generation of pop stars today who are the inverse of that story. They are like, be as close to me as possible, be part of the story, help shape my pop journey. And that's what I loved about this documentary.
I mean, it's clear that she loves her fans. It was quite funny when they were helping her with the lyrics and they were sending her lyric ideas and she was kind of doing it with them. I quite like the fact that, you know, she was getting a lot back from that, and they were as well. She was helping them also, because obviously they were feeling isolated during lockdown, and they love her and, you know, all the rest of it. But it was quite funny how somebody commented as they were having an online chat, and he said, "Don't forget to credit me on the lyrics." And I thought that was funny because she probably won't. She can't. How can she? It's just impossible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's funny. Like, you'll know this, Raj. Like, write a word, take a third.
Yeah. Well, here's the question. Okay, like, I actually didn't see this film at Flare. I saw it a year ago at South by Southwest, which
that is up front. That's up front. Raj, go.
So that to me makes sense. But here's the question: is this an important LGBTQ film or not?
I think it is for them, but maybe not for the viewer. I mean, for her fans, it's a very important process. But as a viewer, is it? I don't know.
Is this going to move the needle for gay film going forward? Which, to me, when I saw this listed on the Flare program, I was a bit like, oh, that's unusual. Because I wouldn't think of this as a normal sort of, you know, important piece of gay film that should be highlighted.
I suppose it is about LGBT people, though, isn't it? So in that sense, it is important. It's a good point, though.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point. I think, okay, I don't know how Charli identifies, but her impact on the queer community, especially the younger queer community, is massive and shapes who they are, how they express themselves, how they present themselves, you know, how it shapes their culture today. And so I think it's an important bit of footage, because I think it talks to indirectly our community, but it's not necessarily your traditional, here's a queer protagonist. But I do think it's very, very important because of who she talks to and primarily who her fan base is.
I was fascinated by it. It didn't bore me ever.
I would like to give it 10 stars out of 5.
Wow, that's wow. You're a hard marker, I thought.
I'm joking. I think for me, but this is very, very subjective because I'm a fan. I would give it 4 stars out of 5.
Okay, so 4 stars from Sean Vickers, the very loyal Uber Charli XCX fan. What about Raj? Over to you, Raj. You got there up front. You saw it before us.
Yeah, you know what? I had a year to think about this film, and I haven't really thought about it that much. So for me, it's 3 stars, but I want the Janet Jackson origin story. I want the Madonna Truth or Dare origin story. So give me that in the future, and it might be a 4 or 5 stars.
See, I was really disappointed by Janet, and that's probably for another video, I know, because we're talking Charli now. But yeah, that didn't delve deep enough for me. So, but yeah, I mean, I want that as well. I'm the same with Raj. I want, you know, the behind the scenes stuff that we didn't know, because I suppose a lot of this was on social media, wasn't it? Because the fans were seeing it on social media.
You know that girl has stories to tell. You know she does. I want to hear those stories. That's what's going to make her more interesting to me. Her fans, you know, besides Sean, I don't really know any of them. So I want the True Hollywood story. I want the VH1 behind the music. So
I want the on the psychiatrist's couch stuff. Because that was obviously tapped into in this. It wasn't delved deeply enough, but obviously it's not about that necessarily. It's about the album creation. But yeah, I want all of that because I'm fascinated by that, how her mind works. It's a 3 for me, by the way. 3 stars. I thought it was good. Maybe not a solid 3, but a 3 nonetheless.
A wobbly 3.
A wobbly 3. There we go. Yeah.
Charli, I'm here for you forever, babes.
Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you guys. We'll see you on the next one. We are continuing our BFI Flare coverage for 2022. Lots of stuff to get through, so make sure you subscribe and like this video. Share it with all your Charli XCX fans.